So, me again. Wait a second. Put a bit of light on this subject. There we go. Chair, light, cup of coffee, and my phone for me to speak at incessantly. It's very nearly time for tea, so I've tried to make this one brief. I just want to make a video. I was thinking about kind of just food in general. I'm about to have my food. It's about 5 o'clock now. So what time is it? 5:09. Food's supposed to be here at 5 o'clock. And all the people that are starving at the moment. I've shared loads of posts on my stories. I've seen some horrible, harrowing, shocking footage today of what's happening in Palestine and Gaza. And I don't know how people can act without empathy, and I'm sort of feeling guilty eating food myself. And so, since I was in hospital in Warrington, I was sectioned. I was taken to the BRI initially in July 2024, and then I went to St Mary's Hospital in Warrington, and I was there until sort of most of July to the beginning of August, and I was brought here. And oh, can we hear footsteps? Keep worrying, I have to pause the video in case staff knock on my door. So probably not a very good time to make a video. Anyway, I was in Warrington at St Mary's Hospital. I think it was called Eve Ward. Only had 4 rooms in the upstairs. And then I was brought down here. And from the time I was in St Mary's, I kind of went vegetarian, and I've been quite militant about it. And I made let me have a look, see if I can find it. I made a bit of a kind of, there's a random picture of a horse I took outside having a fag the other day. Let's go to gallery, have a scroll back. There you go. I made this just as a kind of thought-provoking conversation piece. So do you think that if hospitals prescribed cannibalism, it would cure omnivorism? I've become quite a sort of staunch vegetarian. I really don't like the thought of eating meat. It really fucks my head up. Oh, wait there. Yep, that was the knock on the door to say it's time for tea. Anyway, I think that it's kind of, you wouldn't think that cannibalism is anything other than utterly atrocious, and to eat a lamb or a cow is also pretty grim. And going into a butcher's, they've got all the carcasses hung up, is pretty gross, really. I can remember years ago at school, who was it? Alex Delfont and Joseph Rasmussen, Jack Duff and me were all walking down into the centre of Ashburton, down the long hill in Ashburton High Street. There used to be a family butcher's on the left-hand side as you went down the hill. And Alex was a very prominent vegetarian, always used to wear a Deftones hoodie. Not that sort of anything to do with vegetarianism. Well, yeah, I'll get on to that in a minute. Anyway, he got chased down the alley. He chased down the road by the butcher because he was a militant vegetarian, and so was one of my other mates, Jack. And we're not mates anymore, but I do remember it very well. We not that we've fallen out. I just don't speak to anybody at all since my parents disappeared. He shouted murderers into the butcher. The butcher got really pissed off, and it's it was discussed in a disciplinary hearing at school, in Sands School. I went to a democratic school, which is run democratically, so everything's discussed in a meeting once a week, and all the students, if you bring something up in the meeting, the whole school will listen to you, discuss it and debate it and have a vote on it if it needs having a vote on. And they sort of said, well, what are they then if they're not? If someone killed your cat or your dog, you would, you'd call the police and they'd do prison time. So why is it they can go onto a farm and kill a pig and call it a business. You know, I just what cemented my resolve is looking at it as if it was like a person. If you anthropomorphized meat, then you wouldn't eat it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and nobody would do that, except for people who are absolutely deranged. And I'm not saying that I think omnivores are absolutely deranged at all. I was one, and like I have eaten like fish. I've eaten tuna and mayo a couple of times. Trying to be vegan. I've made some vegan monsieur yesterday. It was very nice, with vegan cheese and vegan corn ham. But there is a disconnect, isn't there, between you know, what we kind of eat and how we look at it. I asked Gemma, what are the top 5 films about or featuring cannibalism, and when was the last prosecution for the practice in the UK, under which specific legislation would or was the prosecution made under? Brilliant grammar there, Brodie McLeod, thank you for that. That's my sound schooling. The bits, Meryl, sorry, I didn't go to your English lessons. Top 5 films about or featuring cannibalism: Silence of the Lambs, Cannibal Holocaust, Alive, Ravenous, Soylent Green. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read you what all those are about, because I want to go and have my vegetarian dinner. But UK cannibalism law and prosecution. Last notable prosecution in the UK cannibalism was a case of R versus Dudley and Stevens in 1884. This was a landmark case that established a precedent that necessity is not a defence for murder. The defendants, Thomas Dudley and Edwin Stevens, were shipwrecked sailors who, after being adrift for several weeks, killed and ate a 17-year-old cabin boy to survive. Prosecuted for murder, prosecution was not made under specific law against cannibalism itself, as no such law exists in the UK, so it isn't actually legal. That's mental. Instead, acts of cannibalism are prosecuted under existing legislation related to circumstances such as murder, outraging public decency, or preventing a lawful burial. I went on to say, could eating an omnivorous diet be considered, or in any way psychologically symptomatic of a mental disorder, or symptomatic of a chronic lack of empathy? If someone doesn't find a butcher's shop morbid, depressing, or unsettling, are they fully emotionally well? How can having love and compassion for cats and dogs not be a transferable trait applied to lambs or piglets, not present as cognitive dissonance or irrational bias, and so therefore constituents of a mild psychological or psychiatric disorder? Like, are meat eaters in touch with their emotions and their feelings? Lots of them will tell you that they love animals, you know, and they've got animals. They've got, you know, horses and sheep, you know, in their farms that they breed just for wool, and, you know, people have got gerbils and hamsters and cats and dogs, and you know how it goes. Omnivorous diet and mental health, no diagnostic link. So there's no recognised mental or psychological disorder. Wait a second, I've jumped the gun a bit there. Eating an omnivorous diet is a common dietary practice and not considered a symptom of a mental disorder. The psychological and emotional responses to food and animals are complex, but the phenomena you describe are subjects of study within social and moral psychology, not clinical psychiatry. Here's a breakdown of the psychological concepts that explain these behaviours. So omnivorous diet and mental health, no diagnostic link. There's no recognised mental or psychological disorder in any major diagnostic medical manual. Like, I don't know what the fuck those things are. You can Google it for yourself if you like. Following an omnivorous diet, it's the dominant dietary pattern for a majority of the global population. Empathy and diet. While some studies suggest that vegetarians and vegans may score higher on empathy scales compared to omnivores, this does not mean that omnivores lack empathy. These findings are correlational and do not establish a causal link. A person's diet is influenced by a vast range of cultural, social and personal factors, not just their level of empathy. I don't agree with that, really. There we are. Emotional responses to butcher's shops, social norms and habituation. For most people, a butcher's shop is not a morbid or unsettling place because they have been socialised to view meat as a food product disconnected from the living animal. This is a form moral disengagement or disassociation, where the mind separates the animal from the food item. This is a widespread coping mechanism, not a sign of mental health issue. Psychological research. Studies on the psychology of eating meat have identified a phenomenon known as the meat paradox, where people who express concern for animal welfare still consume meat. Not being bothered by a butcher shop is a way that many people resolve this tension. It does not indicate a lack of emotional well-being, rather an emotionally protective strategy that is culturally reinforced. Compassion for pets versus livestock, cognitive dissonance and speciesism. That's a new one, isn't it? Speciesism. And prejudice against cows. The distinction between having love for cats and dogs while eating lambs and piglets is a classic example of cognitive dissonance and speciesism. Speciesism is a form of bias where one gives preferential treatment to certain species over others, often based on perceived intelligence, emotional capacity, or cultural familiarity. Cats and dogs are culturally classified as companions, while lambs and piglets are classified as food. Would anybody eat a monkey? Like a gorilla, chimpanzee, orangutan? Leave a note in the comments if you what you reckon. Do you reckon if you're a meat eater and you're arguing that this is not kind of, relevant or in any way a fair parallel to draw, would you eat an orangutan or a monkey or a chimpanzee? Leave me a note in the comments. Cognitive dissonance in the psychological stress that arises from holding two contradictory beliefs, e.g. I love animals and also I eat animals. To resolve this discomfort, people employ various psychological strategies. Redefining the animal, viewing livestock as less intelligent or less capable of suffering than pets. Disassociation, mentally separating the living animal from the meat product. Justification, believing that eating meat is natural, necessary, or a part of cultural tradition. These psychological mechanisms are widespread and are not classified as a mental disorder. They're part of a normal range of human psychological processes that allow individuals to navigate moral conflicts and maintain their beliefs and behaviours in a complex world. So, here's a picture of Hannibal Lecter sat next to a load of psychiatric evaluations. I thought I just got grok to make for me. And yeah, since I've been in hospital over the last year, I've come out as vegetarian. Had a lovely veggie burger for lunch. It was really good. It had like quinoa and beetroot, and it was like bright red, kind of very, very red, but very nice. And then I fell straight back to sleep on my bed here. My IKEA pillows I had to buy because the piss-proof duvet and stuff that they supply in the hospital is horrible. I had to buy a pillow and duvet for like 150 quid from IKEA. Oh shit, my fucking light's falling over. What's going on here? Oh, there we go. Fucking hell. Almost had a crisis then. My ring light. Yeah, this guy in the other ward had he was like listening to death metal, and he had a t-shirt on that said Cannibal Corpse across the front. And on the same day, it was actually a really nice lad, but he used to listen to like what they call noise. I mean, we used to listen to bands in school, but I don't know what noise as a genre I'd never heard of. He listened to some fucking dark shit, but he had all his t-shirts were all death metal bands, and except for one that had Cannibal Corpse. And it was like I was already having this kind of pang about having. I think I ate like a bit of meat or something, and I felt really bad about it. And I was just saying something about it, and one of the other service users was like, "Yeah, like one of my family members was in the Fine Young Cannibals. Did you know that?" And I was like, "Who?" And I was like, I had heard of them, but it was like because I was talking about, feeling bad about meat and expressing these same views. He was like, "Yeah, they're really, really good band, Fine Young Cannibals, Anyway, all coincidence. One day you'll look back at this video and you'll realise that eating meat was a bad idea. But probably not for at least a little while. Cheers.